Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Tips. So, about 15 years ago, I met this guy while in New York City at a tech event, and he blew my mind. We didn't get a chance to stay connected, but I saw him on LinkedIn and I reached out and he replied. So, I had to bring him on the pod. He's doing some amazing things. Brian, what's going on, man?
What's up? What's up? I'm very happy to be here. It's great to see you after so many years. Please don't tell anybody else how many it's been.
I'll
Feeling
try
old.
not to. So, to get the ball rolling, before we start talking about all the amazing thing you've been doing, can you share a bit more about who is Brian?
Sure, sure. So, hey everybody, I'm Brian Shields. I'm an acquisition entrepreneur and growth executive. I've now had almost 2 decades worth of experience starting out in private equity, where I was working with deal teams to buy and improve the
Mm.
value of different kinds of companies, including software and technology companies. I then started an incubator, which is where I met Julbert,
Yeah.
and transitioned to California, where I was running business development and growth at a few
Mm,
different venture-backed startups. The most recent of which was a venture-backed property management business that then led me
mm.
to realize that I should put all that experience together and go out and buy some companies. And so I did that, acquired a company in 2019 that was a property management business, and was
Nice.
lucky enough to exit it for a return in 2022. So done a lot in there. I've had ups, I've had a lot of downs. I'm
Mm,
just returning from a sabbatical and very happy to share all the lessons learned and tell people where the
that's
bodies are
awesome.
buried.
Uh-oh, we're about to get down to it. So, I'm curious, you were in business development and you turn around and buy a business. Can you talk about that mindset, right? Because not every, employee will think about, oh, I got all this experience. Let me go buy a business. Like, what was your mindset at that time?
Yeah, man. So, I would love to see more people, especially people who look like us,
Mm-hmm.
pursue acquiring and owning a business, right? We talk in our community a lot about buying property, and that
Yeah.
is definitely a tool to creating wealth. But in addition to that, owning companies, it's like owning stock, right? Like it
Yeah.
gives you the opportunity to have an unequal impact on your wealth creation directly. And so when you think about, for myself, working in business development, my job
Mm-hmm.
was finding and creating opportunities to grow revenue and grow equity value for these businesses. And
Mm-hmm.
so, at the excuse me, at the most recent one that I was like head of growth, we 20x'd revenue in 2 years, right?
Wow.
And if I own the business, like that equity value would trickle down to me and I got paid well
Yeah.
for it. But I think the thing to keep in mind is that if a company can pay you your six-figure salary,
Yeah.
they have to be getting multiples of that back in terms of value to the overall organization. And so for me, at some point, I came to that realization, and I had to confront the belief or lack thereof
Mm.
that I was capable of doing it for myself. And
Mm.
I know we're raised with like the get a good job, get
Yeah.
stable mentality, and I definitely was too. But at some point, you gotta bet on yourself, because that's the that's the way wealth is created, right? Is like making these
Yeah.
investments in bed. It's not like in your 401k. It's not
Yeah.
like passive investments. It's typically you taking an active role in your life and your portfolio, and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately your own personal net worth.
Wow. You said so much here, and I think being able to make that decision, right? Like you mentioned, to take that next step. So I'm curious, when you were going through that process of acquiring that business, what were some of the top lessons you learned, right? Like you were like, oh, when I do it next time, I'm not gonna do this, or I'm not gonna do that.
You know, this was not my first time trying to buy or buying a business. I'll be candid. So there was like the whole private equity part of this, where at
Mm-hmm.
an institutional fund, I was doing deals, and like that looks totally different than buying like a small quote unquote business.
Mm.
And prior to acquiring Hill and Company, which is the company that I acquired, I had bought this vending machine business, and like calling it a business is probably being very gracious, because it was like a few vending machines with great locations,
Yeah.
and like snacks. So that's what I bought. And in that process, like one of the things that I had to do was actually like
Yeah.
drive and go like stock the machines. And I came to find that that was difficult for me to do for a couple of reasons. Number
Mm.
one, I just don't enjoy driving. So I like just fundamentally don't like driving. So so for me to like make the rounds, it became challenging just kind of like energetically. And that taught me,
Mm.
hey, like focus on things that you are good at and enjoy
Yeah.
doing because you'll be great at them. Right. Second thing was like the ability to measure
Mm.
efficiency and capacity utilization with that kind of a business is just difficult, right? And like the way
Yeah.
my brain works is I like to measure metrics and operate those to higher performance. So,
Yeah.
like taking risks on Doritos versus Sun Chips or trying to transition from healthy foods to something like unhealthy foods or vice versa. It was just like
Mm-hmm.
you could have some metrics on it, but it was so case by case in terms of like this vending machine was in a law firm and like they
Mm.
generally like bad foods, and then this one was at a different kind of company and they like healthy foods, and finding like the
The
consistency
median.
of
Yeah.
cogs of like inventory strategy there was difficult. And so that just reminded me, hey man, physical products are maybe not your thing. Service and tech and like technology activities are like much more aligned with what you do well. And
Mm.
so like that was the big one. And so that like as I started looking at other businesses, I
Yeah.
tried to cross off the ones that were like, oh, this could be like I could talk myself into this because it's a
Mm-hmm.
cool product and the margins look good, etc. Because I had to say no in respect of the fact that I don't do well with product businesses. Like this just hasn't been my experience base.
Yeah.
And there were just other things that weren't necessarily a Brian to business fit. And so that would
Mm.
be like the biggest thing that I like to tell people and talk through with people is in addition, like we're all smart people. Like if you're listening to this podcast, you already made like intelligent decisions. So like I think that we can check that box. You can figure out, is the business good? Is the industry
Yeah.
growing, etc. But it's those qualitative parts of it that really take you from good investment to great, both
Yeah.
in the fact that like you can have an outsized impact on the business where your intuitions, your experiences, your skill sets can really influence the way that the business runs, even if you're in a team. uh,
Yeah.
and that like when year 5 rolls around and you're still running the
Mm.
same business, you're not burned out, you're not exhausted, you're not
Mm-hmm.
like, man, I'm so tired of widgets, I just wish I could be doing something else. So like those would be that's kind of like the big theme that I like to push back on people that I've learned the
So
hard way.
one thing I'm hearing is know thyself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
the best
Mm-hmm.
way to know thyself is by actually taking action like you did, because you
Mm-hmm.
took action to figure, oh, I don't like that, so I'll never do that again. I think that's huge, because a lot of us don't really know ourselves. We don't really know what we like and what we dislike, because sometimes we're so afraid to take that risk, right? Which take me to my next question. I think it's pretty, you guys bought the business in 2019, exit in 2022. That's literally 3 years. So what happened in that 3 year period that made it a great exit for you? Well, like, was it the growth? Was it, and tell us more about that.
Yeah, man. Where I thought you were going was like what happened in that time period, and I will tell you, COVID. It was, man, that was a lot. So I think first just to comment on the point you made about know thyself.
Mm,
And this will tie into what happened
yeah.
during this time period. So one of the activities I had pursued prior to buying a business was just like having some fun. So I partnered with like the fintech company I was at
Mm-hmm.
to help organize this ping pong tournament for fundraising across San Francisco. And like they had started doing some work. It was like a small team. It was kind of like supposed to be second year. And the team was kind of like inconsistently doing what they were supposed to be doing. There's no accountability. And like I just played a lot of ping pong. So I was like, I'd love to
Why
help, but
not?
like, what are y'all doing? And so I just found myself in these meetings kind of pushing a little harder and like trying to
Mm-hmm.
implement a little bit more professionalism and organization. And then I just like became the de facto leader of the group. And so we went from like off track, kind of like product creation and sales to on track, and everybody had clear roles.
Mm,
I took a primary role in like selling and trying to like find sponsors and just like
yeah.
organizing the event and the vision and really empowering people on the team who had strong capabilities in different parts of like customer experience or design or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, just like vibes to make sure that the event went off well. And so what I took away from that was like I do really well when there are some existing processes that need enhancement, and then like we just need to point
Mm,
the ship in
gotcha.
a better direction. And so that's kind of what made the Hill and Company experience work to a certain extent, right? So my partner and I had a business partner in this, who without which I would have not been able to do this because he kept me sane throughout all the ups and downs. So also find yourself a business partner, people. Nobody does these things alone. So he and I, we acquired the business and it was in
Mm-hmm.
need of modernization, right? Like the anecdote I like to tell is that the accounting department had to stand up in their cubicles to see you coming because the papers were stacked so high that you couldn't like see anybody from your desk.
Wow.
And so I got to find a picture of that somewhere. It's somewhere in my phone. And so like we had our work cut out for us, right? The
Mm-hmm.
servers were on site, the processes were super manual, like we had to
Mm,
use manila folders and like stamps to
wow.
get invoices done. And so there's like a lot of opportunity there, which is great, but there's also a lot of work to be done. And so
Yeah.
what I ended up doing was the kind of the same process. I looked at how we were doing things. The benefit for me in this scenario was that I'd either invested in or operated in 15 different industries by this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had seen a lot of different formats and like
Yeah.
organizations of different types of departments. So I knew like this department really functioned more like a customer service organization.
Mm-hmm.
This department functioned like an inside sales team. This department functioned like this, et cetera, et cetera. And so we could reorganize it into some format that looked like
Structures.
a best practice. But
Yeah.
I had the ability and the soft skills as well as the quantitative mind to say, hey, this is why we should do it. Let me help influence you to get there. And then now we can look at these measurements and see we used to do this. Now
Mm,
we're doing better than this because of these
of
changes and
this.
like continue to
Gotcha.
sell that to people. So I think to your spirit of know thyself, like I looked at what I had been just consistently doing and good at and kind of like implicitly invited in to do in some of my like extracurriculars and normal work,
Yeah.
and then just applied that to this. And so overall, we started to turn things around. Like when we acquired the business, we had like a negative 50 NPS, net promoter score, which basically means nobody wanted to refer us to anybody. People were actively not referring us. And we turned it around. We got it to 0 in 6 months, and the industry average is 7. So we like
Oh,
got
wow.
to pretty close to average in 6 months. And a lot of it was just like some of this blocking and tackling and making clear to people how we are doing relative to what is expected of us and the new processes that we've put in place.
Wow. So much to unpack here. Well, I want to go back to a question you said, not a question, but you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
getting a business partner. How do
Mm-hmm.
you identify who's the right business partner for you, right? Because
Mm.
you hear people say, yeah, I want a business partner, I want a business partner, then they're partner with someone and it doesn't go well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
expectation weren't met. So how did you find a good business partner? How did you, okay, this with a good business partner, let's partner up together. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. I would say this is where know thyself really comes into play. And I heard a framing recently from a VC whose name I cannot remember. And they said that they like to evaluate founders of tech companies as if they are missionaries, like they're on a mission for the product and the
Mm-hmm.
problem, or are they mercenaries? They just saw a market opportunity and then just like wanted to jump in and like build something, right? And there's obvious implications in the passion level and the commitment level. So um, I think that the same can be true of these partnerships, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are all these founder and like partner dating kind of like organizations and services and stuff, and they're meant to like match you with somebody, but it's
Yeah,
kind of like I don't mean to speak ill of this, and that's not my intent, but like the dating apps, right? Yes, they can match you with people, but that doesn't necessarily increase the percentage chance of you having a long-term fruitful relationship, right? Like
yeah,
the individual foundational like understanding of each person, how they work and their commitment level to things is really the driver of that. And so how do you cut through that? Well, my personal belief is that it takes time, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to know someone for a while, have seen them in their ups and downs, go through your own ups and downs, kind of see how y'all interact with
Yeah.
ups and downs to then make those decisions. And so, so my buddy who I ended up partnering with, I had known him for a few years. He's, we're about the same age,
Yeah.
have similar backgrounds, and we just kept running into each other in a lot of different social circles. And so we are like, hey, cool cat, let's rap.
That's cool.
And we started escalating commitment, not necessarily to buy a business, but we were just like, hey
Yeah.
man, you're smart, I'm smart. Like, let's figure out some investment things. And we found we were circling some similar interests
Mm-hmm.
in real estate, and so we started kind of like riffing about that, sharing information, having like debates about whether or not a strategy made sense, and then like we looked at some deals, tried to get over the hump, and all these opportunities presented us situations where we had to navigate conflict and kind of see eye
Mm.
to eye. And I think one of the most valuable things I valued in our partnership and relationship was we typically operated from the same like values, like both
Mm-hmm.
goals for the company and just like how to deal with situations. So we could get to decisions relatively quickly with lower friction because we were on
Mm-hmm.
the same page about like how we looked at the world, and that we knew that coming from time. And then
Yeah.
to the know thyself point, like we saw how very complementary our personalities and our like perspectives were.
Yeah.
So like I'm the people like organization leader, and he's the like deep work thinking strategic
Gotcha.
person, and like I am like very extroverted and can be energetically shifted, and then he's like very introverted and can be like very rooted, and so like we can find good decisions between the
It's like the
two
yin and the yang.
perspectives. Exactly. And that only like truly like that only comes from knowing yourself, right? So
Mm-hmm.
and also like knowing yourself well enough to know when to say no to some partnerships. Like I've had
Mm.
to politely decline some people's interest in working together because I just know, having seen them work, it won't
Yeah.
function well for me and how I like to work. So I think that's like really key. But so I would just say like look around, man. Like for anybody who's in community with other, executives, business people, etc., just like try things. Like I think this is where that try stuff thing comes into play. Like try to buy a property, try to buy a business, try
Yeah.
to like make an investment in some stock and just work with other people, because you can then see, oh, Lisa thinks this way, Billy
Mm-hmm.
thinks that way, Deshaun gets this way when he's frustrated or whatever. And like you can see how you function and how they function, and then like does it fit, right?
Wow. Wow. I think that's crucial, especially if you're gonna be in the acquisition space, because you guys are buying like $1 million plus company together. Uh, if there's a lot of friction and people can't decide or make decision together, that thing can not work out. And that now
Absolutely.
everybody gotta hold that debt. So I completely understand. So I'm kind of curious. Being able to grow the business and exit in 3 years, right? What were some of the lessons you learned when you did that first exit?
Yeah, man. We I got this advice from one of my mentors, a buddy that I rode bikes with up in the Bay. And he had sold a company. He'd raised the Series A and then sold his company
Mm-hmm.
to Apple. Uh, and like on the surface, it's like, oh, why did you sell your company so early and blah blah blah. And I had that conversation with him because I felt
Yeah.
like our goal with our business was to hold it forever. Like we didn't intend to sell it. And so he said to me, look, like people will tell you, investors will tell you, we're trying to build this enduring company, take it public, stick it out, etc. But what they don't always appreciate is that an acquirer doesn't they don't come around every day, right?
Yeah.
The person, because when their strategy fits what you have, that
Yeah.
is a point in time, and so you have to evaluate the value and the fit of that timing relative to like all the other things, like, oh, can I
Mm-hmm.
grow this like really really rapidly, am I having fun doing this, blah blah blah, do I need to do this? And so for us it was a right place right time fit, in addition to the fact that we had made the asset and the business like better. And
Mm-hmm.
so we had to have a serious conversation about like, would we regret it if we didn't take this seriously.
Yeah,
And so, I would say that this is a perfect example of luck is a combination of opportunity plus preparedness. The
yeah,
opportunity came along, and that was great. That was a blessing. And our preparedness in terms of like how we set up the business and like set it up, the infrastructure and systems so that they could be replicable and transferable, met at the right time. And that created luck
mm,
for us. And so I won't say that like a 3-ish year exit is the norm. It's definitely not.
yeah,
And COVID helped us accelerate a lot of the internal transition, and that was not without its own psychological or financial costs. Like there's a lot of stuff that came with that as well.
yeah,
But those things put us in position to take advantage of an opportunity like that and have some real discussions with each other about it. And so, ultimately, like that advice rang true, and we said, look, like it's nice to see the ball go through the hoop and know that you can make one of these things work. And so we chose to kind of make the transition, also just to show ourselves like, hey, like
yeah. You could do this.
we know what we're doing, kind of like this, at least once. Like so far I have 100% track record.
I love it. Well, congratulations again. Now, what's next, man? Because you bought a business, you sold a business, you took some time off, now you back. Like, what's the next thing for Brian right now?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first, at the tail end of that I experienced pretty severe burnout.
Mm,
And burnout is real, just like high level. Like I wasn't functioning productively, which was definitely different than stress, because I carry
yeah.
stress very well. Like I can focus and compartmentalize, but I just like couldn't anymore. So I just found that like something was wrong, and I thought I had ulcers.
Oh,
My blood pressure was really high, so like there were
wow.
psychological and physiological manifestations of these things. So I've experienced burnout. I took a sabbatical, and through that, I learned a lot about burnout as a condition and recovery from
Hmm.
that as such. Like, I don't think there's a white paper on the subject I haven't read over the last year. So part of it is just like working with individuals and companies to a certain extent, just like help them think about how to manage their productivity and intensity. So I do some
Okay.
burnout coaching, but broadly, and like my LinkedIn profile says, I'm an acquisition entrepreneur and
Yeah.
advisor, and that's kind of what I do, right? So I'm looking for the next company to buy. I'm developing another thesis that I think I can make a
Okay.
bet on. So that's kind of coming into focus now. I have a couple of deals that I like. I was actually like finishing up some diligence packets on right before we got
Nice.
on, to just think about like what kind of a business I could buy and how does that fit into a longer thesis and maybe a
Hmm.
portfolio. So I'm continuing to look at that, and so I'm always happy to chat with people who are looking to put money to work in that kind of a strategy. And then I'm just working with folks as advisors on their acquisition. So I have a couple of relationships now where I'm working
Yeah.
with like institutional private equity firms, looking at some of the software companies they're talking to.
Nice.
And then I'm working with a couple of investors to be the like operational advisor and executive to some first time CEOs they've invested in,
Yeah.
just to help them like keep the train on the tracks.
I
Because
love
like,
it.
as speaking from experience, being a first time CEO can be, it's not only lonely, it's just like very, very, very tumultuous. You're just like, I don't know what I'm focused on. Am I focused on the right things? Is this
Yeah.
thing I'm stressed out about actually something to be stressed
You
out
should be
about?
stressed
Like,
about.
and is it distracting me from the big decisions I really need to make?
Mm,
So in addition to like, let's make sure we're prioritizing the right strategic activities and organizing the team appropriately and holding them accountable to the metrics we've set, like that all relates. And so that's
wow.
that's kind of what it is for me. I like it, hopefully in a year or two you'll talk to me and I'll be like, oh yeah, I got like these 2 businesses I just acquired, and
Nice.
we're growing them
Well,
at a rapid clip.
it's gonna happen. I could feel it. So to kind of wrap things up, right? What is that one small biz tips you can share with any entrepreneurs? Maybe they're looking to grow through acquisition, or they just acquire a business and they're like, oh crap, what am I doing? Did I make the right decision? What can you share with them to help them?
Yeah, man, I will say 2 things. First, on the last point you made, I have had conversations with people who've started businesses and bought businesses
Yeah.
that at some point they realized they were in over their head. And there's a difference between like feeling the stress and the weight of responsibility of covering
Mm,
people's paychecks every 2 weeks and making decisions that could impact like a lot of the
like,
capital that you've put to work and
yes.
your family, et cetera. And being in over your head where you're like, I cannot get this to work. And
Mm,
I think that the sooner that you can accept that and make a transition, the better. Right. Like it
mm,
said differently, don't be afraid to cut your losses. Like one cat I know bought a business and within a year sold the business. And thankfully, he sold it for like basically break even.
yeah.
When I sold the vending machine business, I took a little bit of a loss, but like it wasn't a huge number anyway. Um, but like cutting that loss so that you can
Yeah.
then go be productive elsewhere is meaningful. It's super
Wow.
meaningful because, like you can look up everybody knows the like what a sunk cost is. So don't like throw bad money or don't throw
Yeah.
good money after bad. Like that's just not a good look. So I think that's like one thing to keep in mind. Like pay attention to yourself in that. And then second, kind of on the other side of that, like do not do this alone. I'm not
Mm,
necessarily saying you have to have a partner, although statistics show that people who have partners tend to do better with their
yeah.
businesses. But like have a board, have people that you consult with, have advisors, have friends, have a community of people who are going through the same thing as you. Like I have a community of Black men in charge
Mm,
that like we have our own like roundtables and stuff. And we
that's
talk
awesome.
about all of the things that are stressful or that are holding us up or blocking us from success. Some of that might
Yeah.
be how do I deal with this like employee situation or how do I design my org to function in a certain way. What one example is like I've been rapping with a guy about how to set up his organization because it functions very similar to how mine did at Hill.
Mm,
And I'm like, here's the deck, here's like the incentive structure I put in place, blah blah blah. Like I'm just giving him all the answers that I
nice.
had, and that's like helping him move forward, or just like helping each other think bigger, right? Like
Yeah.
believe that you can dream bigger and achieve bigger because like people who look like us in a lot of cases get held back by practicality
Yeah.
and responsibility. So sometimes it's okay to dream. So I say like don't do this alone. Like keep people around you because those people will help you in like go further together, right? Like
Mm.
it really takes a village to raise your kids, to raise your net worth, like all of the above.
Wow, I love it, Brian. So how do people get in touch with you, man? If they want to reach out after this podcast, like what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure, check me out. I'm on LinkedIn, Brian L. Shields. It's Brian with an I. I am a gentleman. And I am Brian Lee Shields, Lee Shields on Instagram and pretty much everything else. So find me somewhere there.
Fantastic.
I'm mostly on Instagram or LinkedIn.
Hey guys, check out Brian. As you can see, this man is full of gems. Thank you again for coming in today, brother. Really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Anytime.